Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. We have Mr. Abhijit Chavda who's going to help us understand what's happening in the world. Let's talk geopolitics. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you so much for taking out the time. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, tell me what's happening. I mean, it seems like India was not the only country which went into chaos. Huh? Every country in the world seems to be in local language. You can say "Gayo Ram." There is no. France down, UK down, US down. Russia, of course, has issues. China has issues. But let's talk about what do you see after the elections. We've gone through about month and a half. What do you see happening? How is Modi ji doing? So let's begin with that.
Yes, the elections. I mean, the shock has dissipated now. We did not expect. I don't think anyone expected that the BJP won't get a full majority. And obviously, they have a coalition government now. They're part of a coalition government. They still have a very large number of seats, so they should be able to manage it. But obviously, it's a coalition government with a different set of rules and things. So some would say that this could be a slightly diminished Modi government, Modi 3.0, not the strong, forceful government you had before, and maybe it won't be able to implement whatever policies it would have. Mr. Modi would have wanted to do. I mean, there was talk about a strong push in the first 100 days and all. Maybe that may not happen. But overall, I don't see too much of a problem in this government. I don't think the coalition partners will create too much of a problem for Mr. Modi. They would obviously be more interested in what happens in their states and all that. And from the perspective of economic policy and foreign policy, we should, and also military policy, defense policy, we should still be much on the same track. There should be some significant continuity from Modi 2.0. So that's how I see it. And will there be big reforms? Will there be something major happening? Well, I think that Mr. Modi has no choice but to bring some big changes in the next 5 years. Otherwise, 2029 will be a gigantic problem for the BJP to win. So, despite being in a coalition government, Mr. Modi will have to. I think it's a question of life or death for the BJP in 2029. So they're gonna have to perform, and they're gonna have to bring about major positive changes in the country over the next 5 years. So that's how I see it. And overall, geopolitically and defense-wise, I don't see too much of a change happening. Obviously, we are in a very complicated environment, in a very complicated geographical location. Lots of challenges, as we know. There's China, there's Pakistan. There are other bigger players bigger sharks lurking in the Indian Ocean and thereabouts. So there's plenty of challenges. But yeah, that's how I see the situation for India. Obviously, you said there's been a lot of chaos and a lot of turmoil globally. You mentioned France, what happened there. The UK was not a big surprise, actually. I think everybody expected that Rishi Sunak's party would not perform well this time. And obviously, there's what's happening in the United States, which obviously, well. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's all that. We can discuss all of that.
So they tried to take Trump out. I mean,
Yeah.
big surprise, huh? Big surprise. You
Actually,
tried
you
to
know
take the
what?
guy out.
Yeah, if you watch my previous live streams, I have said this on multiple occasions. I mean, people ask this all the time to me, that do you see Trump returning as the next president? And I've always said that I think it's quite unlikely, because he's an outsider. Nobody likes him in the elite circles of US politics. No one likes him. Even his own party was kind of trying to sabotage him when he was president. There was that. And then I mentioned that there's a non-zero probability that he may be 1963'd. So
Mhm.
I said that on more than a couple of occasions, that there could be this sort of thing that could happen, and that's actually happened. And you know what they wanted to do? They wanted this to happen on live TV. Whoever did this, Okay, I don't believe that there's some stupid lone shooter out there. I think that's all part of a bigger plan. And whoever did this wanted this to happen in high definition 4K on live TV. They wanted to see his head blow up. Okay, to send a message to the people of the US, and that would have been, if that had happened, it would have been like the most significant political event ever in the history of the US. It would send a certain message across, and it would completely upend the political calculations within the Republican Party as well as the Democratic Party, and it would totally bring in a completely new set of leaders in the Republican Party. And some people are speculating, let's say, that this could have been a setup. Well, you can't set this up. You can't
Yeah,
set it up precisely with the wind factor and all that. You simply
here,
cannot.
here, right.
Yeah, that. And he turned his head at the last instant, and that's why he was saved. You simply cannot, set this up. So yeah, they wanted this to happen on live TV, and I guess he's lucky the gods were with him that he did not happen. And then the interesting development is that he has announced JD Vance as his running partner, and obviously Indians are all interested in this because his wife is an Indian lady. So yeah, there's lots of interesting things happening. So I think now it's very clear that Donald Trump should sweep the elections, but
Mhm.
that is given if he stays alive until then, because I don't know, they could try to 1963 him again.
The only factor is that if he stays alive, I don't think the jail factor is going to work, right?
Which one?
The jail.
I think we are past that now. Uh, the tide has significantly turned. There was this taboo in the US against declaring openly that you support Trump, but that taboo is gone now. Now I think everybody is coming out and speaking out in favor of Trump. Elon Musk has done that. Hulk Hogan has done that, and so many other people have done that. And I don't think the Democrats can bring out the jail card now. I think we are past that.
So,
So yeah.
the thing I wanted to ask you about this whole thing is that one thing that you notice is they're trying to push away Trump in a hard way. And JD Vance to me is a very interesting candidate. He's been brought
Yeah.
in. Wife is a was a liberal Democrat. Have you seen the tweets by her peer at one time saying, "Oh, we are so disappointed" and shit like that? So, what is this? Is this the kind of a middle game between Trump and the deep state saying, "Okay, fine, fair enough, you can come, but you need to keep our guy there"?
Yeah, there's always all these backroom deals happening, all kinds of skullduggery, all kinds of negotiations happening. JD Vance, like you mentioned, is a very interesting person, very interesting character. He used to be a never Trumper. In 2016
Mhm.
he was all anti-Trump. And yeah, I mean, he's been part of the Silicon Valley crowd. He's one of the handpicked people of Peter Thiel and so on. He served in the Marine Force, I believe. He's been one of the uh, he's been in Silicon Valley in IT and all whatnot. So very interesting character, and he has taken a full 180-degree turn from being a never Trumper to being Trump's pick for vice president. Very interesting developments happening. His wife also interesting background. Some are saying that he married up. He married among an Indian elite or something like that. Yeah, interesting. And obviously it's going to keep India very interested. And we
Mhm.
also can't forget the Vivek factor. Vivek is going to figure in all this somewhere. Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah, I think he's going to be the Secretary of State if he's the guy who can
Possibly.
do the running around, and especially with India coming out as the big player.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know how these guys actually take the game. But the interesting factor is you mentioned tech, and I've got this perception, and I want your opinion on this, that tech is the new oil. The previous deep state and the so-called globalist powers were backed by the oil money, were backed by the aristocratic money, were backed by the hedge funds. Today it's the tech guys, the 3 4, and I personally say the full form of MAGA was Microsoft, Meta, Apple, Microsoft slash Meta, Apple, Google, and Amazon. That's what basically boosted Trump's growth in Trump part one. So that is the new tech. And if you see your Zuckerberg came out and said, "Oh, that was so fantastic," of Trump. He was like gung ho, and you have this guy Musk backing him. You have Amazon, which is aligning with Trump. Apple is more or less aligning again with Trump. Google has not said anything as of now. I think
Mhm.
Google will watch where the direction goes. Money needs to be made. What do you think about this tech backing of Trump?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think everybody is kind of seeing the direction in which this election is going. I don't think anybody imagines that Joe Biden will win the election. Most likely, he won't even stand for election. There are some people say that by September he'll be pushed out or he'll step down, and somebody else, an entirely new set of characters will appear and stand for election. I don't think Kamala Harris also has too much of a chance. So I think it's very clear the writing is kind of on the wall that if things go if there is nothing untoward that happens any further, then Trump should win. So I think it makes sense for the big tech players, etc., to support him. But yes, you're right. The tech is kind of the new oil. Data. We used to say data is the new oil. Now you have AI, and AI is the biggest revolutionary thing in the world right now. It's gonna change the world as we know it, and what we are seeing is merely the tip of the iceberg, because the real AI is hidden from us. Okay, the real capabilities maybe 100 times what we are able to see right now, and all of that is in the hands of the US government. Essentially, open AI, you can say, has been nationalized by the US government, because there's a former intelligence guy who's on the board of OpenAI. And yeah, so whenever a new technology comes around and it's a paradigm changing technology, it's typically the US government and the US military that has first dibs on that, and they have access to the real deal. We get to see a watered down version of that. So yeah, it could make the US a permanent superpower, maybe a superpower for the next 100 200 years, if they're able to play their cards right. So that's kind of where we are.
If they're able to play their cards right and they don't have a civil
Yeah.
war happening in their country, that's
Uh-huh.
one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. We were like a millimeter away from civil war over there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and the
Yeah.
deal is that that's one thing that I wanted to also bring up is the factor that you see, if let's say they try and do the dhandli that they did in the previous election, they play the game and this postal ballot nonsense and this and that, and if
Yeah.
Trump loses this time
Hmm.
in the election to, let's say, a Biden or a, I don't know, they today, by the way, the rumor today is who Hillary. I said, yeah, of all the things, Hillary. I mean, what are you guys doing?
No,
So,
it could be anybody. It could be Oprah Winfrey. It could be Michelle Obama. It could be
acha, Mike
Dwayne the
Michelle.
Rock Johnson. Sorry?
Interesting word you use, Mike Michelle Obama.
Michelle. I misspoke.
There is that controversy as well, right? The minute they bring
Oh
her
yeah.
up, Big Mike, and they put her back down. No, 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 this is not okay. But what happened yesterday was very interesting. This whole tech outage. It just the day before yesterday. It's funny, and when you rewind this a little bit, you also have Trump talking to Zelensky about this 2019, trying to find the CrowdStrike servers because he said, and I quote, "The family histories of the Bidens and many others are there on that server, and I want it. And if you don't give it to me, I will stop the supplies to Ukraine." As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, they impeached him for it. So what did they just do?
Yeah. Yes, yesterday's tech outage, it affected computers all over the world, and this is not some random company. It's a very well established company with a very good quality assurance process and all that. They simply can't randomly. It's impossible for them to randomly release some bad code. Okay, there's a proper process that goes through, and there are multiple layers of checks and balances. This simply doesn't happen. So it is quite clear from my perspective that this was an intentional release of bad code that had a very specific effect. And what that does is, most companies, they keep data. Okay, most companies keep data backups on a daily basis for about a week or so, and beyond that you don't have backups. So let's say that this outage destroys your backups for the past 10 days. What's going to happen? You're going to lose all the records. I mean, and certain companies may be affected that have sensitive records and sensitive data, and
Mhm.
maybe that's what it's about. So I don't think this was some kind of accident. I'm pretty sure this was an intentional release. And my what I would say is stay away from Microsoft. Use something else.
Apple boy. I'm an Apple boy. I was so happy. I'm like, yeah, bach gaya beta. You're safe. But why Ukraine? Yeah, I mean, this is this really stinks. Ukraine has this server. Ukraine has the biolab sponsored by
Yep.
Obama. The Bush family, the Cheney family, and the Clinton family have investments in Ukraine. The BlackRock owns half of Ukraine. This really stinks now. This is it's giving me a bad taste in my mouth, because the thing that I'm kind of trying to dig into is that what the hell do these two three oligarchs in Ukraine have on all these guys? Because are they threatening to release that, if because they know that if Trump comes back, their money is gone? So are they threatening the deep state, saying, listen dude, figure whatever out, we need our money, Trump or no Trump?
Look, you don't threaten the deep state. You simply don't. You won't
I agree.
live to see the next day.
Hmm.
And it's not just Ukraine. I can assure you, there are many other nations where you have similar setups. Essentially, there's a bunch of nations that the US essentially owns. They kind of run those nations. Those nations are independent and sovereign nominally in name, and they have functioning governments and functioning democracies and elections nominally. But a bunch of nations are actually essentially owned by the US. They are under permanent US occupation. I can give you a couple of examples. Japan is one, Germany is another, Italy is one more, and there's a bunch more. Uh, and you will have, if you dare to dig a little deeper into each nation and how it's run and how the banking system is set up and all that, you will see you will have similar setups over there as well. So Ukraine was the nation with the biolabs and those servers and all that, and I'm sure there are other nations with other setups. So it's not a surprise to me. It's yeah, you're right. There's like two or three oligarchs who are running the show in Ukraine. Zelensky is kind of the puppet, the figurehead, but there's no way they can threaten the deep state. Otherwise, they'll be replaced immediately, and nobody will know what happened then.
Not the deep state, can I say the families?
Well, the families are the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the deep state.
These families, not the families, these families, the Cheney, Biden, Obamas, and
Yeah, well, that's who you talk to, right? If you want to talk to the
yeah,
deep state, the ones who are really in power, you talk to the guys who are visible, the top of the
yeah.
tip of the iceberg, the Chinese, the
Mhm.
Obamas, and whoever else. So yeah, you can try and talk to them, reason with them, negotiate, and say that this is what I need, and these are
It's
this is the
it's
situation I find myself in. So please help me out, that sort of thing.
it's just doesn't click together when you have stuff like this happening, and you have even reactions within India. I don't want to get into the political part of it, but there's someone who just ran away after this whole thing happened. There was a hoax call from Kamala Harris.
Uh huh.
You remember that? And then he just goes gayab.
Okay, I was not aware of this.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
What did he say in that call? Or who was these calls? Were these those Russian pranksters, or who was this? I've spoken to multiple people about this. As a matter of fact, AIM actually tweeted the same thing. He said, "Yeah, this is interesting. I have no idea. There's something happening within this entire game that you can't kind of put your finger onto." But
Hmm.
last question on the states. But do you think the recent statement from Jake Sullivan yesterday in that security conference in Colorado, he again brought up the whole thing. Oh, Modi and Russia and this and that. They're still smarting about Russia, right? They've not been able to da- put that down their throat. Did they expect this? Did they expect this out of Modi, that Modi will take such a step? Or do you think this was, this they just got the way they reacted was like a complete meltdown?
I think they would have expected Mr. Modi to continue to demonstrate continuity of policy. And from India's perspective, it just makes sense from the perspective of the logic of strategy that we need to have options. And Russia is obviously a major partner when it comes to India. India is important to Russia. Russia is important to India. From Russia's perspective, it's very important to demonstrate that
Really?
they are not completely in the lap of China. So Mr. Modi is invited. The red carpet is rolled out. He's given a gold chain. All that happens. It's not just to demonstrate to the US that we are friends with India, but also to China, and so on. And from India's perspective, we simply cannot be over reliant on the US. It is I mean, it's madness to be over reliant on a nation that has historically been no one's friend, that is completely unreliable, unpredictable. They will do whatever suits them at any given moment's notice. So we need to have options, and Russia is a great option. So I don't think this came as a big surprise to the US. Obviously, it did not please them. And they've put out a bunch of articles and op-eds and whatnot, talking, dissing Modi and saying bad things about him, and comparing him to autocrats like Putin and Xi and whoever else. All that is a given. But you will see that they bring out this the terrorist assassination, the Khalistani fellow who allegedly there was some plot to assassinate him, to kill him. They keep on bringing that out over and over again whenever they feel the need, whenever they see the need to apply pressure on India. So I think this is a pressure tactic that they are employing when it comes to negotiating with India, because negotiations, diplomacy, all happens behind closed doors. The public face of diplomacy is all suave and nice and well mannered and very polite and very courteous, but behind closed doors, diplomacy is all about open, naked threats, blatant threats, arm twisting, blackmail, all that. So you need to do certain things in public to be able to do that sort of diplomacy behind the scenes, behind closed doors. So I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes between the US and India. They want India to accede to a number of terms and conditions of theirs, which are going to be essentially, what it means is that we have to give up some part of our sovereignty, because they
Mhm.
have a project K going on in our Far East, and they want us to allow them to do certain things, and we obviously want to do that. And that's why we need options like Russia and other nations. We are kind of also, there seems to be I think it's too early to say, to put it this way, but there seems to be a little bit of thawing of tensions between India and China also, to a certain extent, economically at least. So
Yeah.
there's a whole lot that's going on. And yeah, the US is hell bent uh, on keeping India down. Essentially, what's happening is that they know that they've understood this since 2019, when Mr. Modi came back to power. That if business as usual continues, then India is going to keep on growing. I'll not say India will start rising, but we will keep on growing at a certain pace, 6%, 7%, 8% per year. And by a 2035 horizon, we will be a genuinely great power. And that is something they do not want, they cannot countenance, and that's why they are working on keeping us down from in advance. So from 2019 itself, the entire project has started. And right now, they perceive perhaps that there is some weakness when it comes to the Modi 3.0 government. So that's why I think they're piling on the pressure. And the groundwork was laid from 2022 onwards itself, when India refused to get on board with the US sanctions on Russia. So you had all these think tank experts and journalists and op-ed writers who put out tons and tons of bad press about India. So they were laying the groundwork for taking certain actions against India during Modi 3.0. So now we're going to see those things coming into play. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, that was considering that they would have continued, the Democrats would have continued in this entire thing. My interesting, twist in the whole game is that Biden, I think, aged 30 years in 6 months. So that kind of really took the wind out of it. Uh, the interesting thing, you mentioned these analysts and stuff like that, the superiority complex that we see out of some of these analysts is really interesting. When when you hear them saying, "Oh, I'm disgusted by Modi's hug to
Yeah.
Putin and this and that." That was, you're trying to tell us it's crossing a line, and they don't seem to kind of realize it, that this is the same country in the next 5 years, 6 years you'll have to work with. There is no way you can kind of push us down, because two, three things: India is becoming the data center of the world, so data is data. I mean, it's going to be powerful. Military, economy, there's a whole lot of things which are happening, and you're not able to stop that. So
So
it's
what they hope to do is they hope to stop India's growth, not stop it, but impede it, slow it down, grind it down, and ensure that India doesn't grow beyond a certain point. So for India to grow properly, we will need connectivity. We will need connectivity through with Eurasia, which is some things like the international north-south transport corridor. Then we will need something similar with Eastern Asia with Southeast Asia. So if you have a barrier, a Pakistan like barrier in the east of India, then we simply cannot have that connectivity with Southeast Asia. So they are trying to create that barrier right now. That is Project K. And there's much more happening. So they are trying to ensure that India doesn't rise doesn't rise beyond being a local, a regional power. They don't want India to become a blue water maritime power. They don't want India to become uh, a
That's
great
my
power.
rendition of what you're talking about.
There you have it. Yes, yes, that's what we need actually. The IMEC and all that, Chennai, Vladivostok. So we need all this connectivity. Without this connectivity, without these supply chains, we're not gonna rise. We're not gonna grow and become a great power. Forget. I'm not talking about being a superpower. I'm not even concerned about that. I just want India to rise to its full potential. By 2050, we should be the second largest economy in the world, and that would place us. I mean, naturally, in the status of being a great power. And the Americans don't want that. They've already made a
Hmm.
big mistake with China. They have aided and abetted and midwifed the rise of China, and they want to make sure it doesn't happen with India. The Americans don't want a multipolar world. They want a bipolar world, US and China. And they will keep on talking about China, but the nation they fear the most is Russia, actually.
Mhm.
So all that is going on, yeah.
It's an unhealthy addiction, if I may. It's like
Hmm.
the half their, I mean, huge number of the population is addicted to fentanyl. I think the American government needs to
Yes.
figure that out. But let's come to the K project that you mentioned, which is very interesting. If I
Yeah.
may give a certain amount of background, we saw in about January, February, you know, Sheikh Hasina hitting out and saying that there's too much interference which is happening. Then
Yes.
during our elections, she came out and broke this K theory thing, which is the thing. Uh, of course, there was some reaction from India as well. You brought in the Russians, did a military exercise in the Bay of Bengal. You sent that message out. You're trying to bring the Russians in again with that logistical agreements. So you will have the Russians play game in this area, which is going to upset the Americans. You got your own game little bit, which is begun in a positive note in Myanmar as well. The Three Brother Alliance is kind of talking to you. You've got the word going with the Arakan army, the Chin state over there. So there's some movement in that which is positive, although it's not the same for the Chinese. Sheikh Hasina does 2 trips to India, goes one to China, and suddenly we see the factor that uh, you know she cuts it short and comes back,
Yeah.
and she comes back and the protests explode. So what is this? I call it the Sino-Wahhabi leftist alliance, where the East and the West kind of join forces and say, take this guy down. Or is this a very well planned sort of a game?
So let me explain how I see it chronologically. So
Please.
let's. I always tell a story. I go back in time and start with the history of the thing. So I'll not go too far back in time. Although I
Take your
could
time.
go back to the 1960s. So in the
Mhm.
1960s, the Americans, okay, the United States, the CIA was giving millions of dollars to Naga separatists. Okay, so there was this plan that they had to balkanize India's far east, which we call the northeast, and that plan has been in action since the 1960s. The Americans gave millions of dollars in the 1960s, which is like billions today, to Naga separatists to foment this insurgency, the separatist insurgency against the Indian government, against the Indian nation. So that plan, that desire to balkanize the far east of India has always been there since the
You know the
middle of the
Nehru
20th
angle in
century.
this, right? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you know the Nehru angle, right? He didn't
Of
let
course, yeah,
any Hindu priest go there and stuff like that. There
yes.
was a carte blanche order on this aspect. So
Yes, and Mr. Nehru clearly was not aware of what the Chinese and the Japanese wrote about these things. The Chinese and the Japanese, they are alleged to have persecuted Christians in the past, but they wrote about this, and they said that when our citizens adopt a foreign religion, essentially Christianity, they develop extraterritorial loyalties. And that's why they kind of tried to clamp down on the spread, on the proselytization and all that. So Mr. Nehru clearly did not have this understanding, or I don't know if he had the understanding. Maybe he wanted this to happen, but he essentially turned much of the northeast, much of the far east of India into an exclusively Christian region, and we are seeing definite, effects of that. So we had that happening in the 1960s, 1950s, 1970s onwards. Now let's fast forward to 2019. In 2019, Mr. Modi comes back to power with a big majority, a bigger majority than before. And it becomes clear to the Americans and to the rest of the world that India is going to keep on growing economically. And by the 2035 horizon, we will definitely become a great power. And the Americans did not want this. They have already made a mistake with China. They will not do the same with India. So they kick off Project K. Project K is Project Cookie Land. It is a project to create an artificial Christian nation in India's far east, which will be carved out of Bangladesh, Myanmar, and the Indian states of Manipur and Mizoram. So you create this artificial Christian nation. You bring in all these foreign infiltrators, these cookie tribals from Myanmar. They're not even Burmese, actually. They don't even speak the Burmese language, and they don't even respect the Burmese nation and its culture. But that's the cookies, and they want to create this artificial nation. So how do you create this artificial nation? You will need to give them tremendous amounts, tremendous supplies, arms and ammunition, essentially endless amounts, endless supplies of ammunition. Where do you bring this in from? So you cannot bring it. Yeah, there it is. That's the one. So you can't bring this in from China. The Chinese will not cooperate. The Chinese want the Burmese Tat Patao to remain in power, the military government. So you have to bring in Thailand. You have to rope in Thailand for this. But the Thai government obviously did not want to get involved in this because they have no enmity with India and they don't want to get involved in drug running and arms and all that smuggling. So what happens? The Americans put pressure on the Thai government by unleashing student protests in Thailand, the 2020-21 student protests in Thailand. And these were extremely extensive protests. They were not only anti-government protests, they were also anti-monarchy protests, which is unprecedented in the history of Thailand. So a tremendous amount of pressure was unleashed by the Americans through student protests, these woke students in various universities who go out and protest. And eventually the Thai government capitulated. And I guess the supply of arms and ammunition started into various parts of Burma through Thailand, and the cookies and various other rebels were armed with this. And because of this, the Burmese junta had no option but to stage a coup in 2021 and take back power. But then, by the time the civil war had been unleashed, it is still underway in Burma, and a significant portion of the country is now no longer in the Burmese government's control. So that is what happened. So the Thai angle is there, it is connected to the Burmese angle. And then fast forward to 2023 May, all of a sudden, given some random pretext, the cookie infiltrators in Manipur, who had come in lakhs over the past few years, they unleashed mayhem in Manipur in May 2023. It's been more than a year, and the natives of Manipur are entirely under siege, and Manipur is right now essentially a war-torn place. The government of India doesn't have a significant amount of control over sizable portions of Manipur. That is the situation right now. And there's the Mizoram angle also, which I will not go into right now, but it is there. It is very important. The Mizoram, Mizo, Zomi, essentially the same thing. Okay, so there is that. So this is a project to carve out an artificial Christian nation that will serve like an Eastern Pakistan. What does Pakistan do? It cuts off India's access to Eurasia. We have had historical access to Eurasia for thousands of years. That has been cut off by this artificial nation, temporary nation of Pakistan. So they want to do the same thing on India's eastern flank and cut off India's access to Southeast Asia and the rest of Asia. So by doing this, India is completely isolated. On the north, you have the Chinese occupied Tibet. On the west, you have Pakistan. On the east, you have this artificial new nation of Cookie Land. So what do? We only have access to the rest of the world by sea or by air. Who controls the sea? It's the US that controls the sea. They are the biggest navy in the world, the most powerful navy in the world. Who controls the air? Once again, the Americans have the most powerful air force in the world. So that is what is being done. And Bangladesh is being pressurized to get along with this plan, to get on board with this plan. Sheikh Hasina took the unprecedented step of making these allegations, making this disclosure public. A few months ago, multiple times she spoke about this. She said that the Americans had been telling her that if you agree to our demand to allow them to take some Bangladeshi territory to create this artificial Christian nation, and also give the Americans an island, Saint Martin's or some island in the south of Bangladesh, to create an air force and naval base, then they will allow her to get re-elected. So she made this statement. Yeah, please go
This was a Japanese jump sort of a base when they were trying, during the Battle of Kohima and all that.
ahead. Uh-huh.
This was an area that the Japanese used to do a lot of spy work into. It's not that far into the sea and not that close into the sea, so they had a sort of a this thing headquarters in this area. And if you know, they were also controlling Andamans and all that stuff. So Saint Martin was
Yes,
a very, very, very strategic area. And as a matter of fact,
very strategic.
doubling to it, the Kaikfu port, which is the Chinese made, that pipeline that goes into Yunnan from there, so they want to
Yeah.
cut that as well. So
Yeah, it's an extremely strategically located place. And if they can have that, the Americans, then there will be a Diego Garcia like situation over there, which
yeah,
can not only target China, but mainly, majorly target India. So, in case the viewers are not aware, Diego Garcia became a US possession essentially in 1973. Why did they have to take over Diego Garcia, and create this big, gigantic air force and naval base there? Because of the disaster of the 1971 war, in which they were not able to project power properly in the region. And that's why they acquired Diego Garcia in 1973. It is south of the Maldives. It is part of the same Maldives Chagos archipelago, that underwater ridge.
yeah,
And
it's the
that is,
Mauritian island.
yeah, it should be a Mauritian possession actually. So at that time in 1973, they wanted to project power and offset the USSR. And today, there's no USSR. The Russians are no longer projecting power in the Indian Ocean region, so it doesn't really serve too much of a purpose for the Americans, except for, it's one of the extraterritorial bases they have, and you can't really threaten India from there. You can, of course, but it really makes sense to have an island that's much closer to the Indian mainland. So Saint Martin's Island can serve that purpose. It can be a naval base as well as an air force base. You can project power into India, threaten India, bully India, arm twist India, blackmail India, and do the same vis-a-vis China as well. So that's why they want this island from Bangladesh. The Bangladeshi government is not, thus far, they have not agreed to this. But let's see how it goes. So they want parts of Bangladesh to become cookie land, and they want that island as a US possession, which can be used to target India. And and Sheikh Hasina got re-elected, and despite not agreeing to all this, and she has excellent relations with India. I think Bangladesh is one of the rare genuine allies we India have in the subcontinent. Everybody else plays their games and all that, but Bangladesh is actually an Indian ally. And Sheikh Hasina did, obviously, like you mentioned, she visited China recently, and she had to cut that visit short because Mr. Xi Jinping did not really, you know, uh, treat her well, and give what she was expecting. Very, very cursory treatment and all that. So the ball is in Sheikh Hasina's court right now. She comes back, and all these riots, all these protests are unleashed. Obviously, it's done by the Americans. They have this down to an art. The art of the color revolution, the art of spontaneous, apparently spontaneous protests happening on demand. So the Americans know how to do this, and the Americans have been cultivating ties with the opposition parties of Bangladesh because they want those parties to come into power, and through those ties they have access to students, student leaders, professors, whatnot. So this is a pressure tactic on Bangladesh, and let's see how it goes forward. I would say that India needs to support Sheikh Hasina. India needs to support Bangladesh. India needs to ensure that Bangladesh's sovereignty is not compromised. The Americans want to do that. They want to turn Bangladesh into another Thailand or something. Thailand's sovereignty is compromised by the Americans. And there are so many other nations like that. So they want to turn Bangladesh into their stooge, which can then be used against India. The the overall objective is to encircle India and isolate India, and thereby force India to accede to various American demands and all that, and turn India also into a gigantic puppet state of the US. Or eventually, that's what they want. So yeah, it's a very dicey situation right now when it comes to India. There's gonna be hard days ahead. We won't be
Yeah,
able to see that, but it's going to
yeah,
happen behind the scenes.
yeah, absolutely. I'm sure this is quite a plan. But one of the things, Bangladesh, the chakkar is that they support that BNP, the Nationalist Party, which is there, and we know that there is this guy. If you remember that uh, Mushfaqil Fazal Ansari.
Mhm.
right? So he's the, that State Department guy who keeps asking stupid questions.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. The
Yeah. So
reporter,
he,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So he's from the Jamaat and he's part of the BNP, by the way. And there
Mm.
is also another guy. I don't know if you know who the American ambassador to Bangladesh is.
Not sure.
Peter Hawes. Peter Hawes is the brother of Richard Hawes, who was the president of the CFR,
Well, 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 well. That's interesting.
right?
Okay.
And
Hmm.
of course, there are three musketeers who are behind this. Okay, who are the guys? There's a guy called William B. William, who's a William B. Milliam, not William. He's part of the Democratic Party. And then there's this guy called John Danilovich, and of course Tariq Rahman is there. But the main chap who they depend on is Mia Zahidul Islam Afri, who sits in London and does all this nonsense.
The guy who's been in London for the past 15 plus years. That
Mhm,
guy.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay.
amongst the army, if you remember yesterday, there's that letter that has come out from the army that we will not support the government and this kind of stuff. There's a guy called Lieutenant General Chaudhry Hassan Sarwadi.
Okay.
So these are the chaps who are behind the scenes in this entire thing. So I had done some digging on this with regards to Bangladesh, and uh,
Hmm.
I spoke to a couple of people there. I have a few contacts who gave me some hints, and then I dug up all this stuff. And then the second this journalist came on the scene, and by the way, if you notice, that journalist is gone.
Okay.
He's no more in the question.
I see.
It's just उसको side कर दिया because he was coming up too much and he was, so he was being okay. You just go on the side.
Uh-huh.
What's the break to this? This is the last question before we get into the audience questions. What's the break to this? What's the leverage that we can produce for this? There has to be a leverage. Um, One of the things that I look at is, of course, Jaishankar picking up the Diego Garcia issue. That would have hurt quite a bit. Uh, what else do you think is the leverage? There is another way. I mean, if we flip the board, what's the leverage that we can kind of figure out in this entire game to calm this place down?
Well, the leverage is the nations that our ties with nations that the Americans are afraid of. That's the leverage. See, leverage is all about hard power. There's no
Yeah.
soft power in leverage. There's no soft leverage. Leverage is about, pushing levers.
Hmm.
So, on the one hand, we have good relations with Russia and we can improve them. And the Americans obviously have been playing games now. They are kind of delaying supplies of those jet engines for the Tejas.
G404.
Yeah, G404. They
No,
are
that's
try. They are
that's a
kind of
mistake. By the way, that's a mistake from our babus.
okay. Is it so?
Yeah, yeah. Because when the damn thing
Well,
was ordered itself, they said we will start producing in 2021, 2021, 2022 range, and we will produce 12 engines a year or 21 engines a year.
uh-huh.
They should have raised a red flag at that time. They just kept quiet. So this is the problem with the MOD, by the way. And this nobody decides but that the defense secretary. That's where, after General Rawat came in and all that stuff, they've moved everybody out from there, and now this stuff is only handled by a uniformed officer. A major general rank officer sits there, and he does all this. So that's one of the reasons you see in the LCA Mark 2,
Mhm.
sorry, the Mark 1, which is, or the Mark 2 engines that we are looking for with regards to your the Safran and the 414 and all that stuff. So they've
Uh-huh.
got 2 3 options going for that. So if
Okay.
you guys bungle down, we'll take it from the French. So that thing is moving fast because they know if they lose that, they will lose the market here.
Okay.
The 404 is a bloody mistake that has been made because one, the other day, Patikrit, who's a friend who did a show, that the hull was not designed properly, so you can't fit in any other engine.
Okay.
So in the Mark 1, now the hull is designed so that you can fit in multiple engines.
Okay. So that's the deal. Okay. Right. So what we can, when it comes to leverage, we have Russia. We have our relations with Russia. We can certainly improve them and work on those things, and then we can try and leverage some kind of relationship with China as well. So I'm hearing of late that India is open to having some Chinese products manufactured in India. There's some kind of talk on those lines happening. So that could be another leverage. obviously, the look from the American perspective, a nightmare scenario is that India and China kind of have a better relationship, which
Hmm.
would be a nightmare for the US. Obviously, the fact that we have a bad relationship with China is not our fault, it's entirely China's fault. So, if the Chinese, so it's up to the Chinese to improve that. So, our options, I would say, are kind of limited. France is another option. The French have always historically chafed under the US dominance. There was a time when they kind of went out of NATO to some extent and all that. The French have
60s.
always been chafing under the US dominance of Western Europe, and they have their own quasi-independent foreign policy. They have ambitions of their own. So India and France, there's a significant amount of synergy and shared interests, definitely. So we can leverage that to some extent. But apart from that, we have limited options. We are not a gigantic economy. We are not a huge military. Had we had a major naval force, lots of submarines, lots of assets with distributed lethality, then we could have been able to leverage that in the Indian Ocean region. We still probably are at this moment the most powerful naval force in the Indian Ocean region, but the Americans can change that equation at essentially a week's notice at most, you know.
Hmm.
So options are limited. We have to essentially walk the tightrope the next few years. We have to kind of, to some extent, appease the Americans, but we also have to keep on growing. And the problem is that if we take any action against against the Project K things, the cookie land thing, then the Americans may even go to the extent of imposing sanctions on us, because they can do it, and they are fully capable of essentially turning a country into the next Cuba or next Venezuela if they want. So we have to be really careful. So that's where we are right now. We will have to kind of walk the tightrope between all these competing interests and powers, Russia, China, and the major one is the US. So geographically, our major adversary is China. Our major challenge is China. But geopolitically and globally, our major adversary is actually the US. And they are the ones who don't want us to rise. That's the big problem. So, you know, there's a lot in common that we have with the Americans. We Indians all love the US. We all aspire to go and settle in the US. We understand their language. We watch their movies. We listen to their crappy music, hip hop and whatnot. We do that, and we read the news. Most of the news that we read comes from them, and whatever geopolitics is covered through Indian news channels is essentially a regurgitation of American talking points. Okay, our news readers, they all essentially regurgitate what the West is saying. So we are entirely in tune with the US. The entire population is in tune with the US, but we don't. That's why we don't realize that our major adversary, probably even bigger than China, is the US, and that's a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
problem for us
China does whatever to you about once in a year. These guys do it all the time.
all the
You
time.
know? Yeah. So that's really interesting. I mean, I really appreciate your point with regards to balancing it out. But I think one thing that I would like to add to what you said about China is that you got to get China to where you would want to, you could sit down and kind of twist him. That's the only language he understands. So I think that
Yes.
is something that you've got him right now because his markets are really down. He's
Mhm.
begging you for a market for certain things. If you can kind of leverage that out from him, I think it
Yeah.
and a controlled leverage. One
Control.
of the things control leverages with basically higher stakes within Indian conglomerate, bring him in and kind of leverage that out. I think that is something that could work, and
Yeah.
that give jerks to the Americans. And secondly, I second your opinion about France. As a matter of fact, one of the biggest interesting things, Eric Samosa Chaat Garcetti, um, uh, because that's what he eats. Uh, he when he mentioned about strategic autonomy, 2 days later the French
Yeah.
came out and said, we appreciate support and we will stand by Indian strategic autonomy when it's required.
Right.
So you can see that, and of course, I think that's very interesting. I think one of the another leverage points that Modi Saab worked on was the Austria visit, which to me is very interesting because
Mhm.
that's a neutral country. If you can do something in that entire region, it's going to be pretty interesting. So you'll get a lot of geopolitical force after that. So I think good points overall. I think we could sit down and do a brainstorming someday as to what India should do kind of to counterbalance this whole game. But let's see. The Supreme Court in Bangladesh has already given a comment, and the protest seems to be dying down. So, was this a warning or what? I don't know. Let's see. We'll have to wait and watch. You never know. It could be a
Yes.
temporary respite, and it starts up again tomorrow as well. So, I don't want to put my money on it at the moment.
And we should keep an eye on the Bangladeshi military as well, because there's history there.
Yeah, there's history there, and
Yes.
that's very important. So thank you
Hmm.
for all that, guys. Please like this video, subscribe, and of course, yes, let's get into your questions. But before that, my request, all of you, 100% likes is very very critical. So all of you guys, please do that. You guys know, and please support both the channels. Of course, Sir's channel is really really big, and mine is still tiny. But please support both the channels. Nationalist people always need a lot of support from you guys. So please do that. And of course, yes, you can contribute towards this show by using the QR code or the PayPal in the description, or super stickers or super chats. Let's get into your questions. There are loads of them. I think people love asking you a lot of questions. So um, we will kind of rush through and see. But first, can I just acknowledge 5 members that have come in: Sanjeev ji, Vikas ji, Ketan Saab, and Mr. Boss, Mega Boss. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce that, but Mr. Boss. Thank you so much, Mr. or Miss. I apologize if I've misgendered you. Today, nowadays, people are very, very sensitive about that. But thank you so much for joining the channel. And guys, it's such a happy thing. We've got 800 plus members in this channel today. So thank you. Pal Saab, thank you. Jay Shankar is a former David Rockefeller fellow. A lot of people are. They run a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. So
It's
being a
good to have
fellow,
that. He has inside knowledge.
mhm. Have you read his book, by the way?
I have
In
it. I still haven't read it.
the Bharat, the latest one, you should.
Uh, okay.
Mhm. City of London, the Rockefellers, and he mentions this very clearly that India has multiple entities to deal with. One of them
Hmm.
being the City of London. That's number one that
The
he's
city of
mentioned.
London. Okay.
He didn't say that like at the last somewhere. It was like the first City of London. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. That's when I
Absolutely.
kind of, that's when I kind of changed my opinion about him. Otherwise, I found him to be very reactive. I said, no, 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 no. He knows the game. Okay.
Hmm.
And then I realized, and when you actually read through, he's spoken about external powers and this and that. He's not said the word deep state, but the guy knows what he's talking about. And
Mhm.
you can make out with Mr. Modi and him, the way they are acting, you know that they know about these so-called elites which are there around the world. So that's interesting.
Yes.
Jay Sarafji, thank you so much. Do you guys think 400 past Nogel was just a bluff to the deep state so that they focus on stopping Modi to reach 400 and not on the so-called regime change?
I can't say. If it is so, then it is a great ploy.
It's
You know,
plausible.
but I don't have the inside knowledge to say yes or no. Was it this way? Uh, One can say there's a non-zero probability that this was indeed the case, but
Yeah, it's plausible.
that's as far as I can say.
Yeah. It does make sense though.
Yeah, it does.
It does. Vigneshji, thank you. You say Bangladesh Supreme Court overturned 30% reservation and order reduced to 5% plus 1% to disabled, 1% to minority. All is well now. Let's hope.
Okay, I guess they're doing better than us. We have I don't know 80% reservation by now. I'm sure.
And they want more. People like us
They
need
want
to
more.
just, I don't know. I, I don't know
Yeah,
what
I
they
think
expect us to do.
I don't think they'll be satisfied with even 100%. You know, they'll want 200%.
Mm, God's sakes. Parthaji, thank you. You say, I thought Hussein Obama. Okay. Hussein Obama can be second term president. Vivek, no, get out dirty brown Hindu. After reading his book, he might be let loose on the 3 letter agencies. Pure racist.
Okay. Look, so Barack Obama obviously has served 2 terms, so he can't serve a third term anymore. He used to say that he wished that he had a puppet who would be in power and he could control things from behind the scenes. So he got that with Joe Biden essentially. And if there's a new Democratic president in 24, then that may continue, I guess.
Oh, God. I was debating with myself the other day. The Democrats, what's the kind of pressure you see? The Republicans, what's the kind of pressure you see? The Republicans might not push on this cookie land thing as much,
Hmm.
but the Democrats will. So the Democrats will see this disintegration, this bloody division within the country, and all that nonsense. The Republicans, on the other hand, will say migrant quotas, tariffs, all that
Yeah.
nonsense. So
Uh-huh.
but overall, I would say the Republicans are an edge better than the Democrats. What would you agree to
Yes,
that?
I would agree with that. Historically, they have been probably more favorably inclined towards India. The Democrats have historically been very anti-India, and it's strange that Indian Americans generally vote Democrat.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
I
so I
I
agree with you.
I don't know this time if that happens or not because
Yeah, this time
people
it may
are
change. This time.
pissed off.
Hmm.
Pal Saab, thank you. Israel supports cookies in the Northeast CIA project. Yeah, they're supposed to be
Well,
the lost tribes of Israel.
with 0% Israeli DNA.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they took two villages in 2020, right? 2021,
Yeah, they've
21.
been bringing on, yes, people from that region.
Yeah, Subhashish ji, thank you so much for becoming a member. Partha Saab once again says MG partnered with Jindal for local manufacturing. Why would China allow this, but not to solve the border dispute? Just to keep the narrative king USA happy, or what we were mentioning?
What's MG?
MG is that Morrison Garage, the car company.
Okay.
So it's a British company owned by China, So and they're being brought in. See, as I was saying, a lot of these companies are being brought in with Indian conglomerates.
Yes,
So
right.
China can't muck around in your country. So you got
Hmm.
that. The main control is these guys, and the law is very simple: 51% will be owned by India.
Hmm.
With
Right.
BYD,
So yeah.
so they tried to do that. We said no.
Okay.
So that's we said link up with Tata and figure this out. They said no, no, no. We want this is our we won't share this. So we said okay, bye bye.
I see. So I guess the ball is in their court. If they want to play the game, they can come and do it as per our rules, and that would actually stabilize the situation between the two nations
Hmm.
to a certain extent, at least. Maybe it will postpone the war for another 5 years, perhaps.
Abhinav Saab, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to hear AC sir. My question is: will Trump administration be comfortable with India's strategic autonomy? Can we trust him?
Look, if the Trump administration is very person centric, very Trump centric, then as long as we keep Mr. Trump in good humor, we're gonna be able to, play the game with him.
Yeah, yeah,
So it's
easily.
all about personality when it comes to Mr. Trump, and Mr. Modi knows Mr. Trump very well. They have been good friends, like Mr. Modi says. So if Trump wins, then I'm sure Mr. Modi will be able to handle him properly. And in that case, the equation between the two countries would be quite good.
Yeah, Trump likes Modi. There's no question.
Oh, he does, yeah.
He
Yeah.
does. You remember that scene where Modi and Trump were sitting and Modi is speaking in Hindi, and Trump is like, okay, put this in. Later on, he says, he knows how to speak in English, he just doesn't.
I remember that, yes.
I think that to me was a leveler with him. With Modi, literally leveled it out with him. That listen, don't let's play around.
Hmm.
Interesting. Shivamji, thank you. So realistically, will India truly be free from foreign interference if we touch $10 trillion? We have too many fault lines, traitors within, and insecure America, China to let India rise.
Look, it is essentially impossible to be entirely free from foreign interference, no matter who you are. Even the US isn't immune from foreign interference. They have Chinese assets within their country, they have various other nations' assets within their country, they have traitors within the nation. I mean, have you heard of the year of the spy? They had a bunch of Americans working within the government who were spying on behalf of the USSR. So every nation has this issue. But the truth is that the larger your economy and the more powerful overall you are, the less you are liable to being to the less it is likely for you to be uh, susceptible to a significant amount of foreign interference. So India needs to grow, India needs to rise. Once we reach 10 trillion, we'll have less foreign interference. If we reach $30 trillion, we'll have significantly less, but it's impossible to have zero foreign interference. So yeah, the best thing to do is to get stronger and stronger overall from the hard power perspective, and that way it's better and better.
Do you think the number is 5 or 10?
$1 trillion, I think the
Mhm.
next milestone will be five,
No,
then
I mean
10.
the big number, because if you see the Japanese agreement, I forget the name, when they restricted Japan, Japan has
Mhm.
never crossed 5.
They haven't, right? Yeah, they haven't.
So is it 5 or 10 is something which I don't have an answer. I'm just kind of trying to take an
I
opinion.
think uh, I think India will be taken much more seriously once we reach that magic double-digit mark. $10 trillion.
It's a large country. Makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Palji, once again, thank you. Why Tata, Infi, pro Brit Crown, pro Naxal, anti Hindia? I don't know what you're trying to ask, sir. If you can clarify so that I can ask him again. Surajit Saab, thank you. US wants Bharat sovereignty. Who plays Krishna?
Look, America wants everybody's sovereignty. They don't want any nation to be genuinely sovereign. They want every nation to be controlled by them directly or indirectly. There is
Hmm.
look, from their perspective, they are the sole superpower, and it makes sense to play that game. Why do you do that? Because you can. So one must not take it, be emotional about this. That's just the way the game is played. That's the game of geopolitics, and they'll do that. I don't know about Krishna, what the Krishna angle was in this, but yeah.
Who will be the advisor? Shivam Saab, thank you so much. You say also, I believe in balkanization of India is highly improbable through conversions and changing the religious demography is possible. Although conversions and changing the religious demography is possible. Your views?
The first stage is to indulge in large scale conversions, change the religious demography, and the next stage is balkanization. And there's a significant likelihood right now, non-zero likelihood of the balkanization of certain parts of the far east of India, the northeast of India. It's very much possible right now if we don't play our cards right. We should not be so complacent. There's all kinds of dangers lurking around us, and the Chinese and the Americans have wanted to balkanize India for decades. From the middle of the 20th century, we have already been balkanized multiple times. So don't take it so lightly. We were much larger earlier. I mean, we all talk about Akhand Bharat, right? From Gandhar all the way to Burma. What happened? We were all balkanized. It can happen again. We are not a very powerful country right now. So don't be so complacent, and we need to take these things very seriously.
Very seriously. When I used to bring this up, people used to say, "Tu darar hai sabko."
Huh.
Keval Deo
Because
ji,
people remember the last 5 years of history, and whatever has not happened on TV hasn't ever happened in the real world from their perspective.
yeah. Abhijit Saab, namaskar to both on account of Guru Purnima. Namaskar to you as well.
Sure.
What are both your views regarding Halner's success in cold fusion reactor? Superb achievement, I think.
Acha, I haven't heard of this cold fusion. Cold fusion, I don't think it's happened, right? Cold
It has.
fusion,
They've gone up to a certain level of achievement now.
okay. What's the technology are they using? Is it the
I'm
tokamak?
Yeah, I'm not the science guy. I mean, sorry. I
So, okay, so let me elaborate a little bit. See, there's one way of trying to achieve fusion, nuclear fusion, is to use a magnetic confinement kind of a reactor. It's called a tokamak. Okay, you have a magnetic field, very powerful magnetic
Yeah.
field, which confines the plasma, and you heat the plasma to extremely high temperatures, and maybe then you can achieve fusion. That's the way I see it happening. Apart from that, you can have a nuclear implosion, which is an explosion. Okay. Fission fusion explosion, which is uncontrolled nuclear fusion. But cold fusion without extremely high temperatures, I think we are very, very far away from that happening.
No, actually,
I don't know.
this is something I'd shared I'd kept as a bookmark, which to kind of
Huh?
go through. It's right here. Heinler's cold fusion technology unveiled in Hyderabad eyes global energy market development for decade promises to amplify into significantly more heat, offering a sustainable alternative to traditional power generation. So this has
I
just
am
been released.
extremely skeptical, because I know that I understand what goes on behind this, the physics of this.
Hmm. Hmm. Let's see.
Yeah, let's
I'm
see.
I wanted to actually dig into this with someone who understands this game a little better. I don't.
Mm.
So I don't want to comment on it. But yes, the point is, if it is something like that, two things: keep the damn IPR very close, launch out
Yep.
a patent right, and thirdly, give these guys some protection.
Now, this, if it is true, it's revolutionary. It's the next big thing in technology. I mean, maybe the biggest news of the 21st century. If it is true, cold fusion. That's incredible. If it is true, but I'm extremely skeptical. I don't know what's really happening. Maybe it's
So,
the
sir,
media that's twisting their words or what. But I don't think cold fusion is. We are anywhere near that happening.
they probably have come up with something which takes a step forward, sort of a thing, or
Okay.
yeah. Uh, okay, Palji, Ambani launching CHN brand Shein. See the issue? Yeah, it's not the issue; it's the leverage. That it's a Chinese brand. It's a clothing Chinese brand that you're launching in with Ambani. As I said, all these guys will be brought in. If you look
Yeah.
at BlackRock, also he was brought in with Ambani,
Hmm.
Adani. They're not letting these people inside on their own. Even the Chinese, they're not letting them inside on their own. So that's, I don't
Makes
know if
sense.
it's
Yeah.
it does make a lot of sense. Keval Saab, thank you. Should the government, yeah, Z plus security cover to the Halner team and directly invest in the company? If it is true, as sir is saying,
Yeah, absolutely. If it is true, then we should give them Z plus plus whatever else security, the highest security imaginable.
yeah. Shivam Saab, thank you so much. Should do a podcast on Abhijit's channel. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Let's do that.
My apologies.
No problem.
Anjanji, thank you. Impact on Macron losing Rafale and Safran engine.
I don't think that will impact the Rafale and the Safran engine too much. I think these
Absolutely.
are bigger issues, bigger things, and elections don't really affect that. These are national
Absolutely.
security issues.
Absolutely. Uh, Parthaji says Tista project in talks or finalized in India. Pretty much in India's hand, right?
I think we should get this done sooner rather than later. We
Mhm.
need to have Bangladesh on our side. I'm not sure what the status is, at what stage the talks are, and what to what
They've
extent we have
they've sent a
agreed
technical
on.
team from India. They've sent a technical
Uh-huh.
team after Sheikh Hasina's last visit. So the agreement was signed. The one of the catch points between China and Bangladesh was that only. They said no, 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 you cancel the project and start Chinese studies in your
Uh-huh.
in your country and all. She said, "Bugger off! I'm not doing all this." So she asked for $5 billion as a loan, and they
And
gave
he
her
gave what, 10
100 million.
million? 100
100 million.
million. Yeah. Yeah. So it looks like it's pretty much a fait accompli, the Tista project thing, but I don't think it's been announced yet, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just part of the what do you call joint statement.
Hmm.
Yeah. Pranav Mishra ji, thank you. Jai Shri Ram, big fan of both of you. Thank you, sir.
Thank
Shubh
you so
Guru
much.
Puru.
Thank you so
Huh?
much.
Thank you. The Naked Drummer, thank you so much. You say to Abhijit ji, USA's real threat was US of Europe, nukes, high tech, core, huge capital R&D ecosystem, and so on. During the mid 2010, there were whispers of a USE forming, US Europe forming. Okay, I think with Ukraine, Russia, US took care of the potential USE.
Look,
Interesting.
look, what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Western Europe, when it comes to Western Europe, the real power in Western Europe is neither Germany nor France, it's the US. And they've ensured that none of these powers actually rises. So they have allowed Germany to become a technological giant, but they have never allowed Germany to come anywhere close to nuclear weapons. And the French have their own nuclear weapons, but they have never allowed the French economy to rise too much. And
Mhm.
now what they've done is that, look, without you cannot become a superpower or a major power without access to cheap and copious sources of energy, and they have cut that off from the German economic engine, and that's why Germany has gone into a recession, the Nord Stream thing and the Russia Ukraine thing. So you're right, what you say makes a lot of sense. The Americans, whenever they think of Germany, okay, they still see those marching boots and those Hugo Boss uniforms, so they are very cognizant of that, and they'll make sure it never happens again. And of course the immigration will take care of the superior race theory and all that, so that's over.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the Second World War, and just just as a thing, when I went to Germany, sorry, I went to Italy in Milan. Those stores are there. Hugo Boss. I entered in. I didn't think put two and two together. bought a jacket, came back, Evo and everything. So I was showing my friend, Hugo Boss. He's like, you're a fan of the Second World War. Do you know this guy made the uniforms for Hitler? I'm like, oh shit, I forgot. That was, and it's a big thing, but people don't realize half the freaking industry that is there in Germany is part of the Second World War infrastructure.
I mean,
Volkswagen,
today you have detergent companies like Henkel, which
yeah,
used to make fighter planes in the Second World War.
HE-109, Heinkel. I mean, these are legendary fighter planes.
Yes,
Messerschmitt,
Messerschmitt.
Messerschmitt. Yeah, I mean, these are legendary aircraft. Even the Japanese, for that matter, the Hondas was what the Honda used
Mitsubishi,
to make. Mitsubishi,
Mitsubishi Zero.
mm, one of the most feared fighters in the Second World
Oh,
War.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
A Pandeyji, thank you. Major CIA officers are Anglo-Saxon. Why don't they hire other and all these Anglo-Saxons visit UK and cherish their colonial history?
Well, the US is not a race based nation anymore. There used to be this period of white supremacy and Anglo Saxon, white Anglo Saxon Protestant wasps and all that, but those days are gone. Today, I wonder who really runs the US. So the Anglo Saxon factor doesn't matter much anymore.
Yeah. Pranay Kumarji, thank you so much. The Thousand Island strategy involves stop students from developing technologies on Thousand Islands, sharing advancements to bypass low national progress. This approach prepares Bharat to all dangers. My strategy. Interesting. Thank you for
Interesting.
the suggestion.
Interesting. Yeah.
Okay, Palsa once again says, thank you. Babudam helps Tata use Naxals to steal resources in central India. Some Tatas were peddling opium during colonial era. Tata's running anti-Hind campaign. Before you begin, let me just say this. If you want to do business in those days, in these areas, you had to work with the Naxals. There was no other way. Okay, so you can look it from your high horse, but please go back into this 50s, 60s, 70s. If you didn't work with an Naxal, they would have shot you dead. Simple. Correct me if I'm wrong, sir.
No, that's true. You have to be practical and pragmatic. I mean, India was a certain kind of country, and to do business in India, you had to do certain things. So that's just how it was. When it comes to the colonial era, well, that's old history, and we know what the history was. It's not just the Tatas; it was the
Everyone.
who were the Suskai, who were the Bombay Jews? Forget the name. Sassoons, Sassoons.
Sassoons, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, everybody did business with them.
yeah. Everybody did. Yes.
A lot of people still ask when they read Rajiv Malhotra's fantastic book. Fantastic book. I mean, The Snakes in the Ganges. People say, why are these guys still working with them? Because they want to sell shit abroad. They'll get shut down in 5 days. You don't do stuff like that. You gotta be realistic in life, right? Mr.
Indeed,
India,
yes.
nice to see you, brother. After a long time. कहाँ छुट्टी पे गए थे भाई? भूल जाते हो यार. लोग चले जाते हैं यहाँ से. Deep State has released their foot off the left pedal and now preparing to put it on the right.
Yeah, you could see a change in the US approach towards India. You could see
Yeah,
a significant change going forward in the next 4 or 5 years. It could happen. So, assuming that the US president is not really very powerful and the deep state actually runs the country, then you could see that happen.
true. Absolutely correct. Zesab, Klonsky buttering Trump about his health. If Trump wins, he wants the war to end. So, what about Clown and Turkey? Puts blanket ban on arms to India. That's, by the way, disinformation, as clarified by the Ministry of External Affairs yesterday. So, what about Klonsky?
Oh, Zelensky, he serves at the pleasure of the Americans. Obviously, he is their guy, and he is going to exist and stay in power as long as he is of any use to them. So that's just how it is. And maybe Trump won't find him that useful. In that case, his days will be numbered.
Yeah, well, hmm, that's going to be interesting to watch. Shankar Saab कहते हैं, if USA has biolabs in Ukraine, what's the possibility of a biolab in Pakistan? 50, 75, 100? Yikes.
Well, the Pakistanis don't have such good technological prowess or experts or whatever. So,
क्या बात
see,
कर रहे हो यार?
nuclear physics is actually very simple compared to
Serious.
biotechnology. Okay, nuclear physics is very simple. I mean, even a high school level student can actually, if you give him or her the ingredients,
You
put
can.
put together a crude nuclear bomb. But biotechnology is a whole different matter. So I don't think it's there in Pakistan, unless the Americans themselves are running it.
भाई क्या बात कर रहे हो यार? They can copy every damn gun. That's one thing you got to give the Pakistanis, huh? Bloody
Oh,
hell, you give
they
them
can.
oof,
Oh, they can.
copy
Yeah.
everything. Zest sub garlic shit. Okay, Garcetti. Okay, it's
Oh.
garlic shitty Garcetti. And Jake Suleiman are behaving like loose cannons, speaking like high school dropouts, not as diplomats. This is something that you're seeing quite a bit from the Americans, right?
Yes, a rather robust diplomacy, one could say. Rather, yeah. So it's all calibrated. They want
Mhm.
to send a certain message to India, and that's why they're doing that. So typically in diplomacy, you don't say certain things and you don't cross certain lines, but they're doing it right now. So they are trying to essentially bully, blackmail, arm twist India.
All right. Last few, sir. We'll just run through. Hadi bhai, what about Oman attack to destabilize or something else? Please have a discussion on that with Abhijit ji.
Oman
You
attack.
know the
We had,
ISIS hit
yeah, the last 24 hours there was this a missile
ISIS.
strike by the Houthis on Israel, and then
No,
Israel
no,
is
no, no, no,
retaliated.
no, no. No, no,
Which
that's
one?
Yemen.
Yemen. Okay.
This is Oman. ISIS went and did a bomb blast there, and they kind of said, you guys are being infidel and all that, so we're going to screw you.
I see. Well, that's interesting. ISIS also declared war on Hamas, didn't they? So there's a whole lot of weirdness
That's
going on there.
that's again. I tweeted about that yesterday.
Huh?
I've been fact checked quite a bit. A lot of people have written to me, and then I quoted that tweet and said, "Hang on, let me just get some information." I've got both information saying yes, and that happened in
I've
2018.
seen a
So
video of them doing that. Yeah.
I've been given 2 3 fact checks on this, and I kind of spoke to somebody in Israel and said, "Yeah, please clarify this and come back to me." Let's see. I haven't got a update.
Okay.
Okay, there's an update about Bangladesh key meetings with Sheikh Hasina and National Security Advisor, three chiefs. Okay, something is happening there. Palji, thank you so much. US debt payment is more than defense expenses. Kya hoga?
They'll print some more money and get it done. Doesn't matter.
Um, Shalini ji कहती हैं French Polynesia and New Caledonia should be freed from colonial control and Diego Garcia. India should help them.
Look, the French are kind of our allies. We have to be practical. And look, there's a lot of injustice, inequality, all that stuff in the world. You can't fight every battle. Okay, the job of the government of India is to ensure the long-term prosperity, security, and national integrity of India and her citizens, and that's it. Other people oppressed in other parts of the world, they have to fight their own battles. It's not
Sadly,
our war.
sadly, yes.
Yes,
So you say the greatest gain of reservations is not for those covered, but for the West, wherein a lot of general category people are headed and doing well for those countries. And of course, yes, I
absolutely.
hope I hope someone in the future will demand reservations for people going abroad.
Yeah, we should demand that.
बॉबी रज़ाक जी, थैंक यू सो मच। यू से भारत सरकार जो सनातन के समर्थन से बनी है, कब हम जैसे लोगों के बारे में सोचेगी? सर और किसके बारे में सोचते हैं? पता नहीं।
देखेंगे, नो आइडिया.
काफ़ी कुछ हो रहा है सर। वेट फॉर ट्यूसडे नाइट वेयर आई विल डू द क्रैकडाउन एपिसोड एंड यू विल प्रोबब्ली बी एबल टू फिगर इट आउट।
All
Parth
right.
ji, thank you so much. Have you heard of Beggars Corporations, a startup in Banaras which makes beggars entrepreneurs? That's interesting. By using temple economy as well. My
Fantastic.
shout out. My shout out
Yeah.
here. Parth Chopra ji, you're sitting in the European Union and found this out. Kudos, brother. I mean, I didn't get to know about this. If you can, my email address is there in the what you kind of saw. Please, can you mail it to me? It'll be great. And last one for the afternoon is Partha P, who says Zelensky is ready with Bugatti to dodge CIA plus Putin. His wife bought a Bugatti, right?
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, his wife is a prolific shopper. That's what one hears. Yes.
She bought a Bugatti. She bought a brand new Bugatti.
With US taxpayer dollars, I suppose.
And they bought a mansion in Germany. They bought a mansion in Israel, by the way. And he's got some farm that was owned by somebody from the Rockefeller family in south of Miami.
Okay. I see.
I was thinking the other day, does he have a daughter? I mean, thank you, sir. It's always a pleasure talking to you. This was a fantastic episode, and trust you me, especially your explanation about Cookie Land. Uh, really, really cool. Your clip is going viral online, right?
I heard about that. Yes, I've been
Yeah.
busy the past few days, so I didn't really pay attention. But yes, I've heard something is
Mm.
happening.
It's going go all around the place. So when I
Okay.
put this stuff out about Cookie Land, including this map, the cookies picked
Hmm.
it up and let me have it for almost 5 6 days. It was
Okay.
fun. Yeah. So I'm sure you've tasted that when you talk about the Northeast as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So
I'm not. I'm no stranger to that. Yeah.
yeah. So they took out my phone number and they tried to put it out and they did all sorts of stuff. After
Okay.
that,
Okay.
yeah, I told them you're copycats, and I also just fighting back. After 2 3 days, I
Hmm.
think they got bored and they left me alone. So okay.
I see.
Fair enough. Thank you so much, sir. Always a pleasure. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much for having me. Jai Hind.